So by result of the book, your website, obviously you hear from people, you hear from men, you hear from women. How is it impacting their lives? I mean, you've, in a sense, you're an example for people. You're a prototype of what can be for other people, and that impacts other people's lives. But what are you hearing from them, and how is it touching people?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, it's uncomfortable for me to sort of see myself as, you know, kind of being propped up as being better than anyone else, because I don't see myself that way, and I'm certainly flawed and human, and, you know, so it's a little bit like, well, not so fast, you know, like I'm just like you know, I wrote this book and I've done some things, but, you know, I'm a fallible human being just like everyone else. So I get uncomfortable when it becomes, you know, this idea that I've figured everything out, because it's still an ongoing thing for me. But yeah, I get people reach out to me all the time. I get lots and lots of emails from people from all over. And it's amazing, you know, people will take the time to send me an email, incredibly long, elaborate, heartfelt, vulnerable emails where they relate all of their challenges and things that they're going through in their life, and how my story resonated with them, or they read the book, or whatever it is, and how they've been able to make changes in their life. And that's, you know, for me, when I read that, that's affirmation that even if, you know, my checkbook's overdrawn, you know, right, that I'm on the right path, and that I need to continue to walk this path, because if I can just affect one life in that way, it's worth it. And the truth is that I've had the good fortune to help a lot of people in that way, and it's been amazing. You know, just even tonight, after the talk tonight, I, you know, chatted with a few people, and it's, you know, it's very emotional, you know, and I think that there are a lot of people struggling that need help, and there are answers. And, you know, if that means that they need to look to somebody like myself to hold on to implement changes, then I can be that guy.
Yeah. Do you think as men, as husbands, as dads, do you think we have a responsibility to try to be the best person we can, or is that just, do we just have an opportunity at this life and we choose the path?
I don't know that we have, I don't know that each person has a responsibility to be their best self, but I would say that if somebody wants to experience more satisfaction in their life, then commitment to being a better version of their self is a worthy journey to take. And I think that you don't have to kind of perfect some version of yourself to be of value. You know, I think for me, it always comes down to service, especially if I'm not feeling good about myself, or I'm depressed, or I get caught up in my head about some problem I'm going through, or why isn't this like this, or I get resentful, or whatever it is, to just say, how can I be of service to somebody else that is not as fortunate as myself? Yeah. And that doesn't mean I fly to Africa and feed starving children. It just means I pick up the phone and I call somebody who might be having a hard time and spend a few minutes to talk to that person. It can be as simple as that. And I think the more that you can get into that frame of mind and that practice, then the more contentment you will find in your own life. And that service gets repaid to you tenfold. And that's been my experience.
That's really the key, isn't it? Just get the focus off yourself. You know, men growing up from boys to, you know, adolescents to men, and the responsibility to take on, get into some weird things. You know, they get into alcohol, they get into sex addictions. Some of them are addicted to work. Some of them cheat on their spouses. They get into some weird stuff. Some of them have conflict between who they are and what they know they're capable of being. So what would you say to a man, or to anybody, but particularly to a man that is struggling, that maybe he's in a place he doesn't want to be, and he's having trouble making the change? What would you say to him in terms of getting out of where he is and getting to where he wants to be? Yeah,
I mean, first of all, I would say that I relate to all of that. You know, I know what it's like to be in that place, and I've been that guy. And I would say that if somebody's going through that, you're not alone. And I think it's actually an epidemic, and men are just private about it for the most part, because there's a lot of shame associated with it, because there's this ideal or expectation of what a man is. And if you're secretly living a different life that you don't want other people to know about, or only a select few know about, then that creates dissonance, which is separating you from yourself. And I think that we are kind of like what I spoke to tonight, and speaking specifically to men, we're massively addicted to a whole array of things because we're dissatisfied with the lives that we've been given. And a lot of it comes from resentment of feeling like we've been cheated because we've been sold a lie about what is supposed to make us happy. Whether it's the television ads we see on TV, Madison Avenue, or societal pressures of what those expectations are of being a provider or having the responsible job or whatever it is. You know, I think a lot of men end up in positions that they never wanted to be in to begin with, and a job that they find unfulfilling, but it, you know, pays just enough money so that they can pay their bills and live for the weekend. And it goes back to that quote from Thoreau, you know, the massive men lead lives of quiet desperation. And it's very, very true, and it's sad, you know, and I was there, I've done that, I've lived that existence. And I think that it's callous to say, well, you know, it's not like you can say, well, you got to quit your job and, you know, go play the banjo. You know, that's not a responsible solution for somebody who's out there who's suffering, who wants help. And I think that you have to embark on a journey that is not an overnight thing of trying to acquaint yourself with who you really are. So you have to go inward. It's an inside job, and it starts with, you know, taking time for yourself. You know, whether that's doing a 10-minute meditation in the morning or starting to write a journal every day, like doing morning pages from The Artist's Way, which is a program that helped me kind of acquaint myself with myself. Or, you know, hey, like, what is it when you were a kid that you loved to do, you know, that you don't do anymore? Like, maybe there's a way to start doing a little bit more of that in your life. And I think the more you start to move in that direction, that may require you to, you know, buck, you know, the trend of what your friends are doing. You have to have the courage to do that, and maybe you have to be private about it for a little bit. You'll start to develop a healthier relationship with yourself, because all of these behaviors, whether it's gambling or going to the strip club or whatever, you know, all that kind of stuff, those are just, they're acting out. It's like, you know, it's because you're dissatisfied with the life that you're living, you have to compensate by acting out in other ways that you think is going to salve this pain, this low-grade kind of persistent pain that you have, and you wake up the next day and all it does is make you feel worse about yourself. So you have to break that cycle, I think. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. It's very, very hard, but it's worthy to commit to trying to find a way out of that.
And it's okay for
Yeah.
them to take the chance. It's okay for them to do things that they know are right for them, their family, but they know their friends are going to look down their noses at them.
Yeah, and I think it's important to find somebody that you can talk to. You know, to bottle it all up and keep it private is, you know, you're only as sick as your secrets. And you've got to find somebody, maybe it's a therapist initially, or somebody that you can talk to, that you can dump this stuff on and try to get a little bit of feedback and counseling. So you got to get over your shame or your, you know, insistence on being private about it and fear about confiding in someone else, and find somebody that you feel like you can trust, or take the leap of faith with somebody. And that's the beginning of getting into the solution.
And sometimes it's not serious addictions. Sometimes it's just, it's, you know, maybe someone has a job that they're working at, as you said, because someone painted a picture, perhaps their father, of what they should be, and they're just living that, but they're not happy.
Right.
So, which is still a big move for somebody. It's a little bit scary. And
I think that you know, and when you get scared, you go, well, that's great, but I don't have time, you know. And the truth is, we all have free time. If you really are honest about how you spend every minute of every day, I guarantee you can find giant amounts of time that you waste, you know, doing this, that, or the other. And if you're really serious and committed to trying to do something different, you can make some decisions about cutting some of that stuff out of your life that isn't serving your goal or making you happy, and redirecting that free time into something more fulfilling and productive for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. One more question, just respecting your time, and then we'll wrap it up. Generationally, and again, I think I mentioned this to you at lunch, there's a big difference as I look at my grandfather, my father, expectations, what is a man? What are they supposed to be? What does it look like to be a man? So let me ask you, what do you see in terms of maybe where your grandfather was, your father was, who you are, and maybe what you want to see in your boys? And really, I guess the bottom line question is those differences, but it's also, let's look forward, let's look to the future, let's look for your boys. What kind of example are you trying to set for them? What kind of men do you want them to be?
Yeah, that's a big question. You know, my grandfather on my mother's side died before I was born, so I never had a chance to know him, and by all accounts he was an amazing guy. My grandfather on my father's side was quite old by the time I was able to, you know, communicate enough to have a relationship with him, so I can't say that I really knew much about him. You know, he was a very taciturn, serious guy. My father is a great guy, you know, and is a self-made guy and achieved a lot and is very respectable gentleman, you know, wakes up on a Saturday and puts a blazer on, and he's great, you know, he's amazing. And he only, as well as my mother, only wanted what was best for me and tried to create all the opportunities for that. So it's, you know, generationally, I think that you know, for him, it's difficult probably for them to kind of embrace the idea of doing something out of the box. But that's not a slight against them. It's just, you know, it's different from their experience, that's all. And I think for me, and my boys are teenagers now, so they're, you know, this is a very, you know, timely issue. And they're musicians, and that's what they're passionate about. And my whole experience and kind of evolution in recent years has been about trying to live an authentic life, you know, authentic to who you are. And so they see that, and they're like, we want to be musicians. And so then that brings up all these issues in me, like, well, what does a responsible parent do? You know, it's sort of like, you know, I want to have the conversation about being responsible and having opportunities and choices and college and all that. And I have to reconcile that with what I get up in front of audiences and talk about, which is being who you are. And they're telling me this is who they are. And so I have to support that. So it's not a simple thing, you know, as a parent, because you have to be supportive, but they also lack life experience that I have, you know. So trying to come up with the right recipe for responsible parenting is a challenge, you know. But I think ultimately I want them to be fully expressed in who they are, and I will support them to the end of the earth in that regard. And that doesn't mean that that I'm not afraid or have fears or, you know, there's a protection instinct that comes over me. But ultimately I can't sort of corral them into a system that I rejected either, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. You just want them to be who they are
exactly.
To be, or
yeah.
who they decide to be.
Yeah, and as a parent, you know, we've always tried to not talk down to them, but to respect them and to understand that even at 16, 15, 14 years old, they're more astute than you imagine, you know what I mean? And I think that has paid dividends, because we always try to have treated them with a certain level of respect for where they are, and not be like, you're the kid and you listen to me. And now they're wonderful young men, you know, and I think it's directly related to that.
Rich, thanks so much for your
So,
time.
thank you.
Really
a pleasure, yeah. Thanks for having me. All right, cool.